不认为村内的男人比
First of all, let me say something. I don't think the men from the village are worse than the ones from outside. That's not the point. But we need to face a very real truth. If you're a woman over 35 and try signing up for any dating platform, you'll see there's simply no market for us. And if there's no market, why do we keep putting ourselves in this place of expectation, frustration, pressure? It's like we're fighting against ourselves. A few days ago, 2 women who married men from outside the village joined my live stream. One of them seems to be living a decent, calm life, and the other, honestly, she seems genuinely happy. She met a guy from London, 7 years younger, and he really goes out of his way for her in every possible way. But what impressed me the most was her attitude. Even though she has someone she could lean on, she doesn't. She stays grounded, independent. She said she doesn't rely on him, and that comes from within. She stands on her own 2 feet. She's got herself. And you know what she told me? That men from outside the village usually don't discriminate based on a woman's age. That really got me thinking. Maybe that's the only path left for those of us who still dream of a traditional relationship after 35. Because here in the village, honestly, most men can't even hide how uncomfortable they are with our age. So, I had an idea. What if we created a club? A club just for us women. To support each other, to care for each other, to grow old with dignity, freedom, and autonomy. Without depending on a man, without waiting to be chosen. Because if the men from the village can't handle our age, we can. We can build something new. Together. Of course, I'm not saying the men from the village don't have good qualities. They do. But we can talk about that later in our club. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk.
Guys, after this, I totally get why there are so many women in their 30s being left behind, and worse, thinking they're some kind of prize. A few days ago, my cousin met this 32-year-old woman through a matchmaking setup. On paper, everything looked fine. Similar ages, families eager to see them married, the usual story. My uncle rushed to get help from a matchmaker, and at first, things seemed promising. They started chatting, went out a few times, all good. My cousin was really putting in the effort. Picking her up from work, taking her out to dinner, walking around town, he was doing it all. But it quickly became clear that she wasn't serious. You know what she told him? Straight to his face? That she was part of a club, yes, a club, of independent women, where they all agreed the key was to keep their standards sky high. That men should never be a priority. And even worse, she didn't need a husband because this club had a whole plan to support each other in old age. Literally, we'll grow old with our girlfriends, and men can figure themselves out. Like, seriously? What do you even say to a woman like that? She treated my cousin like her personal delivery boy. Asking him to bring her medicine in the middle of the night, making him drive across town to pick her up from work, and constantly dropping hints on holidays. All my girlfriends got flowers and gifts, and I got nothing. Meanwhile, she kept saying she didn't want anything serious. My cousin tried to have an honest conversation, but she always came back with that superior attitude. Marriage? What's the rush? You think my life revolves around that? This went on for almost a year. Until one day, he'd had enough and said, "Figure out what you want. When you do, call me." Then he just stopped contacting her. 2 weeks went by, and she, thinking he'd come crawling back, went straight to the matchmaker to complain. She threw a fit, saying the service was terrible and that she'd been misled. That's when the matchmaker finally snapped and said, "You're 32 and still acting like a spoiled teenager. That guy did everything he could for you, and you just played around. If you didn't want anything, you should have said so. And this club of yours, do you really think your girlfriends will be there for you when you're old and sick?" And right then, the woman went silent. I swear, if there had been a hole in the ground, she would have jumped right in. Let me tell you something. Women like this really do exist. They act all empowered and modern, but deep down they're just selfish, spoiled, and completely out of touch with reality. Here's my advice. Don't pretend to be some ultra-independent queen if you're actually terrified of ending up alone. If you want a family, be honest. Real chances don't come around that often. And what about you? What do you think of this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!
Do older women have no value in marriage anymore? These old-fashioned adults stuck in outdated ideas are the same ones who go around saying, "We live in a modern society now. Men and women are equal. There's no need for dowries anymore." Yes, those same people. I just have one question. If we really live in an era of gender equality, then why can older single men go on public matchmaking events and no one finds it strange? In fact, they still demand that the woman be young and beautiful? Same expectations, dowries, owning a house, owning a car, being independent, responsible, frugal, and good at homemaking. By what right? By what right can older single men criticize older single women so confidently? Where exactly is this so-called gender equality? Is every older single woman lazy, materialistic, and only looking for an outrageous dowry of 880,000 yuan? This current social atmosphere has been completely twisted by certain people. It's already 2025, and there are still people trying to use marriage as a tool to control women, still reducing a woman's value to her age. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the marriage rate in 2023 hit the lowest point in nearly 40 years, only 4.81 per thousand. In top-tier cities, 30% of women over 30 remain unmarried. And that's not surprising anymore. That's why more and more of these women are creating mutual support clubs, communities where they help each other emotionally, share financial resources, and are actively planning to care for one another as they age. They're building safety nets, solidarity networks, far away from the emotional and economic dependency of marriage. So I truly hope my sisters will not be shackled by patriarchal thinking. A woman's worth is not defined by marriage, but by her talent, her skills, her character, her education, by the contributions she makes to society, to her family, and by the love and passion she brings to life. Whether you marry or not, whether you're 30, 40, or 50, that changes absolutely nothing about your value. And here I have to bring up the case of the woman in Shanghai, who lost half of her 200 million yuan inheritance to a man she was married to for less than a year. This woman, under the pseudonym Tang Lu, was almost 31. On one hand, she felt pressured by her age, and on the other, she was swayed by sweet words and the intense pursuit of a man, and agreed to marry. Just 6 months after the wedding, her parents died in a tragic car accident while traveling. And as we all know, many men are experts at pretending to care and faking sincerity. A man from an average family might keep up the act until the woman gets pregnant. This man, who married into a wealthy family, kept up the act until both of her parents died. Why? Because he had already discovered that her parents didn't leave a will or do any kind of estate planning. He studied the legal loopholes and knew that the 200 million yuan would now be part of their shared marital property. So, 6 months after the death of her parents, he filed for divorce, citing personality differences and emotional breakdown, and demanded half of the inheritance. Yes. He wanted 100 million. That's human evil in its purest form. That's why so many wealthy only daughters from regions like Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai no longer want husbands. They'd rather have children and pass their wealth down to them, because the darkness of human nature is unpredictable. Bringing a man into the family could mean losing everything, or worse, putting your life at risk. Just look at the case of Hong Kong socialite Abby Choi, who was brutally murdered, dismembered, and disposed of by her ex-husband and his family. Isn't that terrifying? That's why truly independent and capable women, once they reach their 30s, often no longer want to get married. And if they do want children, today's biotechnology can make that happen, without hurting anyone physically or emotionally. Can men do that? No. They can't afford surrogacy, so they resort to emotional manipulation. They lie, they hurt women emotionally and physically. How do they do it? They create age-related anxiety. They tell young women, "You need to marry me soon, have kids for me now, give me your youth, or no one will want you when you're older." But nowadays, most women have woken up. That script doesn't work anymore. According to the Ministry of Civil Affairs in 2024, the average age of first marriage in China is now close to 30. And in Europe and America, it has already surpassed 35. So sisters, don't let yourselves be bound by patriarchal narratives. What they really want is to satisfy their physical desires, to fulfill the duty of continuing their family bloodline. But they don't want to take responsibility. Even when they do marry, later they'll complain that you're not a good housewife, that you earn only 3,000 yuan a month while they earn 30,000, complain that you bring nothing yet demand a house, a car, and your share of the dowry. Even if they give you something, they'll want to control it. And once you're married with kids, it's nearly impossible to leave. The trap has already been set. Then comes the emotional neglect, financial control, mama's boys obeying their mothers, and often, cheating, domestic violence, all of it. Either you silently accept it all, or if you try to leave, you lose everything. The house and car aren't in your name. You won't be able to take your child with you because you have no stable income or family backing. So young women, before entering marriage too early, what's your foundation? What's your safety net? Of course, if you are financially independent, have a stable career, a reliable income, you won't become a prisoner of marriage. If your partner is someone who shares responsibility instead of shifting the burden onto you. If you believe in love, not as a fairy tale but as something real, and are willing to accept imperfections and brokenness, then yes, go ahead and marry. But if you meet all three of those criteria, you've already been through the battles of the workplace. You have emotional maturity. And so, you're probably not that young anymore. So I'll say this. There is no perfect age for marriage. There is only the right state of mind and the right person to marry.
Why do women make life harder for other women? In the latest episode of a variety show, actress Lu Yan's mother shocked viewers by openly saying that her daughter is already a leftover woman, and that, if she's going to marry now, it would have to be with an old man. Lu Yan's mother's statement was truly eye-opening. No one expected that her own mother, a retired teacher no less, could say something so outdated. But in contrast to her mother's outdated thinking, Lu Yan herself is a clear-headed and strong-willed woman. She has told reporters that marriage is not a mandatory part of life. If you meet the right person, great. It's a bonus. But if not, that's okay too. A woman can lean on a man, but she should never depend on one. Because the moment you depend on a man, you lose yourself. Lu Yan believes that a woman should maintain her independence, her dignity, and her financial autonomy. She once said that, since the age of 18, she understood the importance of a career for women. When asked if she feared growing old alone, Lu Yan replied, not at all. With her financial stability, she could easily afford a high-quality retirement home. And even if you have children and grandchildren, she added, there's no guarantee you won't face old age alone. One of the most shallow perspectives in this world is reducing a woman's success solely to her looks. When you ignore a woman's independence and personality, and credit her achievements only to her appearance, your thinking is already out of sync with this era. It takes a clear and strong woman to say things like that. Lu Yan is a powerful, independent woman. Years ago, she entered the entertainment industry to pay for her mother's medical treatment. She spent 5 years in Beijing as a struggling actress. No house, no savings, no boyfriend, and no clear future. Today, Lu Yan has achieved both fame and financial freedom. She owns a 230-square-meter ocean view apartment and lives a life that feels like a vacation every day. She's successful, independent, fulfilled. And yet, her own mother fails to see it. In front of reporters, all she could say was that her daughter is getting older, and soon she'll be entering the senior years. So if she wants to marry, it would have to be with an old man. This is a living example of how the worst kind of harm against women doesn't always come from men. Sometimes, it comes from other women. Women who, instead of lifting each other up, tear each other down. Just like in the popular series The Knockout, where the character Rose is beautiful, independent, and strong, yet still constantly attacked by fellow women. Many of these attacks come from women who are still deeply influenced by outdated, patriarchal ideas. Not only have they failed to awaken to their own freedom, they go even further and attack women who have. For men, marriage is often about continuing the family line. For many women, it's still viewed as a way to have someone to rely on or ensure a stable life. That mindset comes straight out of feudal times, when women were not allowed to be independent and could only survive by clinging to a man. Ancient rules, like the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, dictated that a woman must obey her father before marriage, her husband after marriage, and her son after becoming a widow. In other words, she could never take control of her own life. The worst part? After thousands of years of social conditioning, these rules successfully brainwashed generations of women. Even today, in a world where gender equality is the norm, there are still women who believe being a good woman means getting married, staying home, and serving a husband. These women, in many cases, are even more loyal to the rules that oppress them than the men are. And when they encounter modern, forward-thinking women, they don't reflect on their own outdated thinking. They join forces with the men to mock and suppress those women. After this episode featuring Lu Yan aired, it sparked widespread debate online. Many sympathized with Lu Yan's situation, saying, "If even someone as successful and admirable as Lu Yan still has to endure this kind of pressure from her own mother, imagine how we, ordinary women, must feel. We'd be completely crushed." Studies have shown that many people who choose not to marry or have children come from emotionally unhealthy family environments. So the feminist awakening we're seeing now is just the beginning. We can only hope that, in the future, more and more women will free themselves from these outdated, ignorant beliefs and learn to live fully, on their own terms. And it's precisely within this context that we're seeing more and more women forming mutual support clubs. Spaces where they share experiences, offer emotional and financial help, and plan to grow old together with dignity and independence, without relying on a man or society's approval. Real progress will happen when women stop competing with each other and start genuinely supporting one another. So what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk.
Don't be afraid of the so-called leftover women. They come together to keep each other warm, while the leftover men just gather to grow old together. When a group of single women gets together, at most they vent, complain about men, drop a few passive-aggressive comments, and then each goes on her way. But when single men come together, the story changes. At first, they're a bit shy. They sip on something, smoke a cigarette, gossip a little about what type of woman they like. But as time passes, their thoughts start heading down a much darker path. Everyone knows, two old men in Shandong can build an anti-aircraft cannon with their bare hands. Three old men? They're already climbing Mount Tai just to prove they still got it. Now imagine a whole group of leftover men, full of energy, no family responsibilities. When they team up, they become a real social instability factor. As the saying goes, when more than three idle men gather, a king of bad ideas is born. And before long, they start connecting the dots. You're good at this, I'm a pro at that. Why don't we put it all together? If they're lucky, they end up writing a new chapter in the family tree. If they're not, well, they might just end up on court TV. I'm wrapping up the video here, but I really want to hear your take on this dilemma. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you in the next one.